Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons and horror. Today we'll uncover the past and secrets of Tara Kolyana and the mysteries of Tatyana Fedorovna's many incarnations, the victims of Strahd's unhealthy love and obsession. Before we start, a warning to our followers who know Ravenloft only through the 5th edition adventure Curse of Strahd. Curse of Strahd is a remake of the original I6 Ravenloft adventure, and makes several changes to concepts and the timeline of the Ravenloft campaign setting. The Curse of Strahd adventure takes place in 735 of the Barovian calendar, and Tatyana's reincarnation is Ireena Kolyana. Although the same character exists in the official chronology of the old campaign setting, she appears more than 200 years before, in 528 of the Barovian calendar. To avoid any confusion among our viewers, the present video will consider the chronology and timeline of the Ravenloft campaign setting. Are you ready? Determined to fulfill our profane contract with the Arcanaloft in Ahira, we set out for Hazlan in search of the whereabouts of Tara Kolyana. Our search attracts the attention and fury of the Dark Lord Hazlik, but we finally find Tara Kolyana, and the anchorite of Ezra is determined to help us escape from Hazlan. Guided by Tara on secret paths through the mountain, we told her our lies, saying that we are sent by family members from Barovia to resolve an issue of inheritance. The young woman does not seem to believe our stories, but she does not accuse us of lying, or refuse to help us to escape. At night, camped in the mountains, she revealed to us strange and confused dreams about a distant time and past lives. Hour of the Raven. In my dreams, I see a wedding, flooded by tears of blood. A pale face watches me with red eyes, yearning for me across the ocean of time. I feel him calling, pulling me into this spiral of darkness, but I refuse to give myself to this doomed destiny. With the grace of Ezra, I will fight against the fetters of fate until I can be the light that drives away the darkness that surrounds us. Tara Kolyana is the latest on the many incarnations of Tatyana Federovna, the woman who was the object of Strahd's sickly and obsessive love, and whose soul is eternally trapped in a cycle of reincarnation and torment. The current incarnation of Tara Kolyana is a heroine who fights against her destiny and the forces of darkness, and adapts to the Ravenloft campaign setting common themes of Gothic literature, such as the reincarnation of past lives, the mark of a tragic destiny, and obsession and unhealthy love. Although the book Dracula does not mention that Mina Harker is a reincarnation of Vlad's old lover, in recent movie and television adaptations of the novel, as you can see on Francis Coppola Bram Stoker Dracula, Mina has been portrayed as the reincarnation of an old lover of the vampire count. This interpretation of the character is perhaps the main source of inspiration for Tatyana and her many incarnations. Tara Kolyana is a beautiful woman in her late 30s, with striking green eyes and red hair. For those who know about her past lives, it is possible to identify in her appearance, and in the outline of her face, many similarities with Tatyana Federovna, whose face has been immortalized in a painting that adorns the walls of Castle Ravenloft. Despite living a traveling and adventurous life, Tara Kolyana does not wear armor to protect herself, and can usually be seen with the white and green robes that identify her as an anchorite of Ezra. Tara Kolyana, while young, showed an agitated temperament, restlessness, and a wanderlust. The emotional temperament of her youth was only appeased when Tara found the fate of Ezra and joined the church, finally finding inner peace. Today, she is known for her unshakable faith and the remarkable compassion, charity, and kindness of her actions. She is a pacifist, and will try to avoid violence against any living creature as much as possible. She is an anchorite of Ezra, and as a cleric, has divine spells and blessings at her disposal. She carries few possessions with her, but always wears a magic amulet around her neck that can drive away the undead. Despite finding peace in Ezra's fate, she has recently felt once more a restlessness in her soul, and began to have strange and enigmatic dreams and nightmares, with images of many tragedies, a marriage, and a pale and monstrous face. But what led the restless girl to find peace in the life of an anchorite of Ezra? What do the mists of time and the gears of fate hide to torment this heroine in the land of the mists? To understand the tragic past and fate that surround Tara Kolyana, it is necessary to go back to the oceans of time, the lands of Barovia, before its tragic imprisonment in the demiplane of dread. Tatyana Federovna was born in a peasant family in Barovia in the year 333 of the Barovian calendar. At the time of her birth, the kingdom of Barovia was occupied by Turk invaders and emerged in a bloody war. The ZAROVICH family, through General Strahd von ZAROVICH, led the campaign for the liberation of Barovia. After decades of struggle, the battle reached a dramatic moment in 347 of the Barovian calendar, and it appeared that the Turks would prevail over Barovian armies. Through a dark pact with the Arcanoloth in Ireena, Count Strahd managed to win a decisive battle of the war, and over the next year, he freed Barovia from its invaders. Tatyana's family settled in the lands near the village of Barovia, at the foot of the mountains where Count Strahd decided to build a new seat of his power and government, the imposing castle Ravenloft. Tatyana's life would change in the year 350 of the Barovian calendar. Count Strahd invited the nobility of the kingdom, exiled for decades, to return to Barovia, and his younger brother SERGEI von ZAROVICH came to his court in Castle Ravenloft. The 26-year-old SERGEI was preparing for a clerical career at the Untitled Church. His joviality and innocence, as well as his insistence on having contact with the peasants and poor of the village of Barovia, irritated the Count and reminded Strahd of all that he had sacrificed over 26 years of war for his homeland. On one of his visits to the town of Barovia, SERGEI met the beautiful Tatyana, who was 17 at the time. SERGEI and Tatyana quickly fell in love, and the nobleman seemed to have no objection to the young woman's humble origins. The love between Tatyana and SERGEI was enough to convince the young man to abandon his clerical career. SERGEI and Strahd's fraternal relationship deteriorated when he communicated to the Count that he would abandon his clerical career and announced his marriage to Tatyana, a lowly-born Barovian peasant. When Strahd finally gave in to SERGEI's requests and agreed to meet the young Tatyana, he too fell in love with the beautiful peasant woman, and his heart was filled with envy and suffering. Tatyana aroused his deepest longings, but when he tried to approach the young woman, Strahd realized that Tatyana saw him as a father figure and affectionately called him elder. The couple asked for Count Strahd's blessing for the wedding, which he reluctantly granted. The wedding was scheduled, and all the nobility of Barovia was invited to Castle Ravenloft. As the marriage approached, however, Strahd's despair increased, and he searched for a solution to his problem in ancient books and tomes of dark magic. On the wedding day, he found in an ancient tome a spell that promised to fulfill the deepest desire of his heart. An enchantment brought him into contact with a strange entity who Strahd refers to as Death. This entity promised Strahd to keep him away from aging and death in exchange for the macabre murder of his younger brother, from whom he should drink the blood. Strahd went to his brother's quarters, where SERGEI was preparing for the wedding. SERGEI received Strahd with the anxiety and happiness of a groom about to be married, and Strahd presented his brother with a dagger. The frightened young man tried to understand the meaning of the gift and his brother's evil gaze, and Strahd stuck the dagger in SERGEI's heart. While he was bleeding to death, Strahd brought his lip to the wound and drank the blood that poured from his heart, and transformed it into a vampire. As promised by the dark entity, he was now immortal, immune to the effects of time, and with SERGEI out of the way, he would have Tatyana just for himself. The delay of the fiancé raised suspicions. After the discovery of his body, chaos ensued, and the guards suspected assassins were in the castle, and the gates were closed. The sad news devastated the bride Tatyana, and Strahd went to comfort her on the parapets at the back of the chapel. Seeing Strahd, Tatyana cried on his shoulders, lamenting SERGEI's death, but was startled with his icy touch. Yearning for the beautiful Tatyana, Strahd was carried away by his emotion and declared his love, kissing her. His cold and dead touch and his morbid lust before the grieving bride made Tatyana realize the monstrosity he had become. In pain and despair, she fled from Strahd. The vampire chased her briefly, but in horror, she launched herself from the castle parapet into a gorge shrouded in mists. The mist suddenly rose to envelop the castle, while Strahd mourned Tatyana's suicide. The lands of Barovia were taken to the demiplane of dread, and Strahd was now the absolute master of his domain, but was forever imprisoned within its borders. Tatyana's body was never found in the gorges around the castle. Her soul, however, was trapped in the mists, and her destiny was eternally connected to the evil and torment Count Strahd von ZAROVICH. In 400 of the Barovian calendar, Strahd found Tatyana's first reincarnation in his domain. Ireena suffered from amnesia and was found near the river by the men of Burgomaster Laszlo in Kresk. She was taken to Brother Grigor, who named her as Ireena, and she went to live in the home of Burgomaster Laszlo as his adopted daughter. Sinister rumors suggest that when Ireena started to grow up and become a beautiful young woman, Burgomaster Laszlo planned to revoke her adoption in order to marry the young woman. Count Strahd met Ireena when he was buying old books from the Burgomaster, under the disguise of the noble Vasily von Holtz. Strahd recognized Ireena as the reincarnation of his beloved Tatyana, and thought that fate has given him a new chance to conquer her love. Strahd began to court Ireena, and was preparing her for her transformation as his vampire bride. Brother Grigor noticed the bites and the signs of Ireena's transformation, and warned Burgomaster Laszlo of the situation. Laszlo was resentful and decided to take revenge against Strahd, driving a stake through her heart before she could become a vampire bride to the Count. After her death, the Dark Powers commanded the Mist to take Ireena's body before Strahd could reach it. Strahd mourned Ireena's death, but all his fury and revenge did nothing to ease his pain. However, a few decades later, Strahd would meet again another incarnation of Tatyana. While attending a banquet, one of the attendants who served him caught his eye, and Strahd recognized ALINA, a new reincarnation of Tatyana. Strahd renewed his hopes of finally winning her affection, but young ALINA died of an intense fever in 445 of the Barovian calendar. For the second time, fate has shattered his hope, as if the Dark Powers were tormenting him. Strahd was in great pain, and with ALINA's body in his arms, he attempted suicide, but the Mist prevented his death, and took ALINA's body away from his arms. After this strange event, Tatyana's soul seemed to have split. Her future reincarnations, a few years after ALINA's death, took place in two distinct bodies, separated in different worlds and planes of existence. A fragment of her soul was reincarnated in the world of Toril in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. Little is known about Anna, but she was a tormented person who suffered from the madness of having her soul fragmented and divided. Interned in a sanatorium in the city of Waterdeep, Anna was practically mute and passed most of her time in silent contemplation of her surroundings. However, at times she was afflicted with a deep despair and overcome with a great fury, trying to escape her confinement. Anna was found by Jander Sunstar, an elf and a vampire, who had managed to maintain his kind and gentle nature, despite his cursed undead condition. He used to go to the sanatorium in Waterdeep to feed off the blood of the tormented and insane. When he met Anna, he felt a deeply connection and fell in love with the beautiful and tormented patient. Jander visited Anna every night, staying by her side and wondering what kind of magic could make this woman so tormented by sinister visions and madness. All he ever found was that Anna was constantly whispering a name, Barovia. During a harsh winter, Anna contracted a serious illness. Fearing for the life of his beloved, Jander tried to turn Anna into a vampire, but she reacted vehemently against his act, using all her strength to try to ward him off. Anna died shortly afterwards, and Jander, in shame, despair, and fury, cried out for the night that he would seek the one who had condemned his beloved Anna to such a terrible torment, and find revenge. One must be careful to declare his wishes to the darkness of the night, for the dark powers heard his bravado, and the mist swallowed him and imprisoned the vampire in the demi-plane of dread. In the land of the mists, Jander was haunted by Anna, who often appeared in his dreams, demanding revenge against the one who had caused so much suffering. Meanwhile, another Tatyana reincarnation was walking through Barovia, with only a fragment of her tormented soul. Olya Ivanova lived in the village of Barovia and was recognized by Strahd as a new reincarnation of his beloved Tatyana. The only record of Olya's existence can be found in the Tomb of Strahd, the memories of the vampire count. Strahd believed that Olya was just a tormented fragment of his beloved Tatyana. Interestingly, Olya died of illness in 475 of the Barovian calendar, the same date as Anna's death in Waterdeep. Tatyana's next incarnation was in 528 of the Barovian calendar, in Ireena Kolyana, the adopted daughter of Kolyan ZAROVICH, the burgomaster of the village of Barovia. The young woman also suffered from memory loss, and did not remember her origins or how she arrived in Barovia. After Count Strahd found the existence of this new incarnation of his beloved Tatyana, he began to pursue her, and the burgomaster requested the support of a group of adventurers to save his daughter's life. The elderly burgomaster did not resist the stress of the Count's constant assaults on his daughter, and suffered a heart attack, leaving Ireena in the care of her adopted brother, Ismark. Adventurers from distant lands finally came to answer the burgomaster Kolyan's call, and stood in the way of Count Strahd. They tried to save Ireena and even stormed Castle Ravenloft to confront the vampire count. Little is known about the horrors that took place inside the castle, but the continuation of the dominion of Count Strahd in Barovia indicate that these adventurers had a terrible end. The end of Ireena Kolyana is also unknown. The foolish or brave who dare to venture and explore Castle Ravenloft say that in its lower catacombs, Ireena's tomb can be found, and her tombstone records only her name, identifying her as a wife. For a long time, we have no record of Tatyana's other reincarnations, but just before the events of the Grand Conjunction, her fragmented soul would reincarnate once more in two different bodies and worlds. In Barovia, in the demi-plane of Strahd, Tara Kolyana was born in 718 of the Barovian calendar. However, outside the prison of mists, in the kingdom of Barovia that remained in the material plane, a fragment of Tatyana's soul also incarnated in Princess Christiana. Both incarnations of Tatyana suffered from the torment of having an ancient and fragmented soul, but both found peace in fate. While Tara Kolyana became an anchorite of Ezra, Christiana became a powerful priestess of the ancient faith of Andral. Christiana also became the queen of Barovia on the material plane, when she married King Baron von ZAROVICH VI. With Count Strahd von ZAROVICH trapped by the mists in the demi-plane of Strahd, this fragment of Tatyana's soul seemed to be free from the torments that afflicted her past lives, but the fetters of fate are not easily broken. In the land of the mists, the Vistani Skoza, Adukar, had prophesied 6 signs that would precede the Grand Conjunction, an event that would bring the end of the land of the mists. King Azalin, the Dark Lord of Darkon, manipulated events to speed up the signs of the Grand Conjunction, and ended up anticipating the last and 6th sign of the prophecy before the 5th sign had been completed. In 740 of the Barovian calendar, for a brief period, the mists released their prisoners, and Strahd and Azalin returned to the material plane where Barovia was located. After centuries of waiting, Ireena, a powerful Arcanoloth, finally sensed the proximity of his Book of Keeping and the soul of the traitor Strahd von ZAROVICH. The Count, in the past, had made a pact with Ireena to win the war against the thugs, but had not paid the price of his soul, taking the Book of Keeping, where the unholy pact was signed, to the demi-plane of Strahd. When the Arcanoloth Ireena sensed Strahd's presence in the vicinity of Castle Ravenloft, he invaded the place and brutally murdered King Baron ZAROVICH VI, mistaking him for his mortal enemy. Realizing his mistake, Ireena decided to kidnap Queen Christiana, and demanded of those present that he would only return their beloved queen alive when the Book of Keeping was returned to him. Count Strahd, who had Irena's profane book of contracts in his possession, wanted a new chance to win the love of this incarnation of Tatyana, but he could not deliver the book to the Yugoloth, under penalty of the fiend collect the price of his soul. Meanwhile, Azalin intended to fulfill the last sign of the prophecy and to consolidate the dissolution of the demi-plane of Strahd by the Grand Conjunction, and for that goal, he intended to help Ireena to reverse its destiny and to claim Strahd's soul. The intense impasse was resolved in a confrontation between Azalin, Strahd, Ireena and a group of adventurers, and thanks to the intervention of these heroes, Queen Christiana was freed, and Irena's Book of Keeping was destroyed by the power of the holy symbol of Ravenkind. With this act, the last remaining sign of Skoza's prophecy was not fulfilled, and the end of the Land of the Mist was averted. Strahd, Azalin, and Ireena were swallowed up as prisoners of the Land of the Mists, and the vampire Count was prevented from reaching his obsession and conquering Queen Christiana. Meanwhile, in the Land of the Mists, Tara Kolyana grew out of the vampire's reach and eyes. Tara Kolyana was born in Barovia. However, shortly after her birth, Tara's parent consulted a Vistana seer, who made a terrible prophecy. The Vistani reported that the girl had an ancestral soul and was marked by fate. She would not live past her 20th birthday, and death would come to her, as she had done so many times in the past, and so many times she would still do in the future. Tara Kolyana's parents, frightened by this macabre prophecy, fled Barovia, hoping to save their doctor from the terrible fate. They reached the realm of Hazlan and settled on a small rural property near the city of Zriva. Despite being raised as a foreigner in an oppressive society of Hazlan, Tara was well raised by her parents and grew up to be a young woman with a strong temperament but kind and charitable. Despite this, she was plagued by strong emotions, suffered a great restlessness and wanderlust, hearing a calling from distant lands. When she was just 17, she had her first encounter with the supernatural. A wolf plagued the surrounding farms, and many hunters were looking for a way to hunt him. The young Tatyana, from an early age, was already a pacifist, and was opposed to the animal's death. She built a trap to catch the beast, and was surprised in the next morning when she found a naked man in her trap. The young Tara discovered that he was a man infected by the curse of lycanthropy, and thanks to her help, the young man was healed with the help of the local priest and a group of Stani who were crossing the region. This encounter with the supernatural showed Tara her vocation. She decided to placate her unease with a life of adventure and decided to travel through the land of the mists to help those in need and fight the forces of darkness. Tara's adventurous life took her to many places, but nothing seemed to placate her anxiety. She was constantly plagued by dreams and visions of her past lives, and felt the call of an ancestral destiny. In Borca, she found the Church of Ezra, and felt the call for the religious vocation. Tara Kolyana identified with the figure of Ezra, and the dogmas of her faith, and found in her devotion peace of mind and tranquility. Tara joined the church and became a traveling anchorite, taking Ezra's word, kindness and charity on her journeys. Tara has become a pacifist and believes that all living creatures, even those capable of evil acts, are deserving of a fair treatment and a chance for redemption. She has no hesitation to destroy the undead, seeing it as a charity to these creatures with a cursed condition of suffering. About 3 years ago, Tara Kolyana received a letter from her family, telling her that her father was on his deathbed. She immediately returned to Hazlan, staying at her father's bedside with her mother during his final moments. Tara's father, in his last words, told Tara about the prophecy of the Vistani that led them to leave the kingdom of Barovia, and of his joy to learn that his daughter had avoided the dark destiny predicted by the Vistani. After her father's death, Tara Kolyana remained in Hazlan, where she helped to spread Ezra's word, acting in aid of those in need in a land so oppressive and unjust. She endures the contempt and insults of the priests of Bane and the Iron Church, and has gradually conquered several Hashamen with her teachings. Since the final revelation of her father, Tara was returned to feel a strong anxiety, and even the strength of her devotion to the cult of Ezra has not removed these feelings. Constant nightmares plague her dreams, with visions of a tragic marriage and the pale face of Count Strahd. As time goes by, she feels more and more uncomfortable on her journeys, feeling the irresistible attraction of destiny, being pulled by the sinister darkness that inhabits the heart of Barovia. Throughout our journey, Tara helps us cross the Balinox and move away from Hazlik's influence. Already near the border of Barovia, we camp at night and listen to the young woman confess her dreams and nightmares about past lives. Our heart is heavy with the weight of betrayal to someone with such a pure heart, and who has offered us only help since she met us. Tara seems to read the weight of guilt in our eyes, and with a sad look, she tells us words of wisdom from Ezra before retiring to sleep. At night, we are plagued by doubt, but we cannot go back to being cursed wolf beasts or slaves to the will of a domineering vampire. When Tara Kolyana falls asleep, we sneak up on her and use a knife to cut a wad from her hair. Without wasting time, we abandon the young woman in her rest and hurry to the border of Barovia. When we look back, we have the impression of seeing Tara's open eyes watching us, with a mixture of sadness and pity. Consumed by guilt, we took Tara's wad of hair to the Arcanaloft Ireena in Telfador, imagining what supernatural horrors that creature from the lower planes will accomplish with what we offer him in his quest for revenge against Strahd. Join us, subscribe to this channel, and activate notifications, and we will go to the kingdom of Borca in search of an amulet lost for decades among the aristocrats of the Dislinsia family, to fulfill the last part of the Dark Pact we signed with Ireena.